If there's anything Sacramento Kings fans can have confidence in, it's who Doug Christie is as a person, as a player, and as a coach. He really has never changed. However, it's very clear that his defensive first standard that he talks so much about is not actually being upheld through his actions and his rotations and his playing time that he's giving to his players. Why is there such a disconnect? How do we make sense of it? Jeremiah Salmonson joins me to try and figure it out right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. Proud to host the Locked On Kings podcast, one of the many podcasts as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the number one podcast network on the planet. Like, I'm so proud of that. And thank you to everybody who has been a part of this Locked On Podcast Network, whether you listen only to Locked On Kings or Locked On Kings is one of the handful of Locked On podcasts that you listen to. We appreciate your support. Thank you for helping us reach this unbelievable milestone. If you listened to my episode of Locked On Kings last night after the Kings' embarrassing loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves, their second straight blowout loss, you heard Doug Christie speak very passionately about defense. This is nothing new for Doug. He's always been a defensive first guy. The way he played, the way he talks about the game, breaks down the game, it's always been defense first. But his actions, the players that he's playing, who he's not playing, they just do not seem in any way to match the things that he's saying in the standard that he says is already set here in Sacramento. Defense first for the Kings. That is the standard. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So instead of trying to make more sense of this on my own, I figured let's bring another guy who covers Doug, who watches this team closely. Jeremiah Salmonson, become a good friend of mine here covering Sacramento Kings basketball over the years. Jeremiah and I dive deep into where the disconnect is coming from, how it could possibly make sense, and we even explore a little bit of, is it really Doug Christie that's making the full or has full decision-making power? So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want to weigh in with everything or anything that we talk about, feel free to do so at Matt George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But please enjoy my conversation with Jeremiah. There's not a whole lot about this Sacramento Kings team that makes sense, but one of the more perplexing things over the last couple of games is Doug Christie's rotational choices, who's playing, who's not, and how what we're seeing on the court and the decisions that should be Doug's don't seem to match the things that he's saying, particularly when it comes to his defensive standards. So to help me kind of talk our way through this and try and make sense of why the words and the actions are not exactly one and one, Jeremiah Salmonson. He is one of the hosts of the Section 105 podcast, plus a Kings and A's beat writer for Sports Radio Service. Jeremiah, well, we're 10 games in, buddy. 72 more to go. How you holding up, huh?
Yeah, it's I've covered the Kings for many, many years, Matt, as you have now. So nothing really surprises me with this team. But you said it well. We're 10 games in, but it feels like we're 40 or 50. So it's we're in for the long haul with this team, and we're really getting it all early from them. You're kind of seeing everything that you probably don't want to see if you're a Kings fan, but you're getting it all early on with this Kings team.
There's only one thing that the Kings can do this season that I would consider like a legitimate disaster, and it feels like they're already on the path to doing that. And that's getting to a point where the fan base is just indifferent about this team. And like 15,000 people were in the Golden One Center for the Kings Timberwolves game, I guess you could call it, And that's about 2,000 less than what a sellout crowd is. I am like the one thing that's been consistent, you know this, Jeremiah, the one thing that's been consistent with the Sacramento Kings over the last 40 years that they've been here is the fan support. Like the fan support has always been there. The loyalty, the love, the passion has always been there about this team, regardless of how good or primarily bad they've been. If this, whether it's ownership, front office, coaching staff, players, if they find a way to essentially get the fan base to go, we don't care, like this doesn't matter, that's where I would really start to hit the alarm buttons if I was this organization. And it feels like we're kind of already on that path 10 games in.
Yeah, I mean, when you have the fans in the building yesterday, as you know, we record this on a Monday. Yesterday, booing the team, chanting, "We want Keon," multiple times throughout the game. I mean, yeah, I mean, what you're saying, I think I don't think there's really any ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, this fan base is turning on the Kings, and I use the Kings in air quotes as in I feel like it's more the organization than it is the actual players.
Yes.
And Doug, but there's frustration up and down, right? I mean, fans aren't happy with some of the way that the minutes are being distributed amongst the team. There seems to be kind of a desire for the youth movement in Sacramento with pretty much everyone except the Kings leadership. As they're trotting out, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook and guys like this. I mean, Russ has been a nice little addition to this team, but yeah, I mean, the fans, they've kind of had enough. And you said it in the open. I mean, Kings fans are some of the most loyal fans in basketball or in sports in general, but there's only so much this team could take. And, I don't know where the fan base goes from here, really, because I don't think the Kings are going to get any better record wise. And we'll see if they decide to make any big changes to the lineups.
Well, Kings fans are also incredibly smart. Like they're very bright and they're very tapped into what is going on, what the common denominator has been, and like there's no necessarily place for ownership at this point to really hide from that. They've been the common denominator through over a decade now of being bad, with the exception of like 1.5 good years. But they have, like we saw Vlade Divac go from a hero and a legend in this organization to kind of a villain because of the Luka Doncic situation and his time as a general manager. And I wonder if that we're headed in the same direction for Doug Christie. I know a lot of people are upset with Doug Christie, and that's what we're going to kind of dive into today, because while I don't think any of us fully believe that everything that Doug Christie is doing is 100% his choice. No, he might tell us that, just like Monty McNair told us that, and we all knew it was a bunch of baloney. There are things that you would think Doug Christie, as the head coach, the one in charge of the rotations, a former player who has done the things that he's talking about on a nightly basis about on the defensive side of the floor, he's saying all these things, and you would think like you should be the one that should be able to carry that out with what you can control on the floor. He can't force Dennis Schroeder to play defense or DeMar DeRozan to play defense, but he can decide if they're not going to do it, then they can come out of the game and Keon Ellis or somebody else can go in. And 10 games into the season, really these last 2 games, Doug is not doing that. Why? Like, why? We're trying to make sense of it. Why? What is a logical explanation for why Doug is sticking with these players who are very clearly not doing what he says the standard is in Sacramento?
Yeah, and I mean, he reiterated it yesterday, right? He says that, the Kings are going to have a damn standard was his direct quote. The Kings are going to have a standard. And that's what he's been preaching since he took over as interim head coach last year. The problem with this is we all know, and Kings fans know because they're smart, it's a personnel issue, right? So Doug doesn't have career defenders really on his team. He has guys like DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis fits right into that same category. They've never really been players that hung their hat on defense. Now, you maybe could say they've hung their hat on effort. I mean, Domantas Sabonis gives 110% effort every single night. No one's going to question that. But he doesn't have the personnel to be a defensive team, really. I mean, if we're just being blunt, I mean, that's just kind of what it is. And like you said, the personnel that he does have to play defense, like a Keon Ellis, the last 2 games have played all of the fourth quarter, but didn't check into the game until the fourth quarter. So it's one of those situations where he's talked about there's a log jam, and whether it's Russ getting those minutes or it's Malik getting those minutes. I mean, yeah, he's got to figure out where the minutes come from if he wants to play a guy like Keon Ellis. And Keon Ellis isn't going to fix the Sacramento Kings. But like you said, what he's saying and his decisions with substitutions and lineups just isn't matching what he has to do in order to put a defensive team on the court. And I think we all know why. It's a little bit of, he's got to manage the egos, and this isn't calling anyone out in particular, but I mean, DeMar DeRozan's a future Hall of Famer. I mean, Russ is a future Hall of Famer at this point. I know he's kind of a late addition to his team, but Domantas Sabonis has been an all-star. Zach LaVine's been an all-star. You got these guys that you can't really sit, right? So I don't know. We'll see if Doug really will say, no, the buck stops here, and I don't care about your career. I don't care about your ego. You're getting sat because you won't sit down on the defensive end. We'll see if he does that.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than on FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. That's right. You can play along with the action as it's unfolding in front of you all season long. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked On Kings is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it so simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same numbers and your contacts. I love that you're getting the same quality service that you had before from your other providers, but for a fraction, and I mean a fraction of the price. The setup is super easy. You keep your number, and then you're running in minutes. So if you're ready to say yes to saying no, make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Upfront payment of $45 is required, equivalent to $50 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. So are Doug's comments just doing him a disservice at this point? Because one of the things we've known about Doug for years is that he is very intentional with how he speaks. And Doug has been very consistent through his time as a broadcaster, a radio host, a player, an assistant coach, now a head coach. The message has always been the same: defense first, defensive identity, physicality. We're going to hit first. All these buzzwords and pillars that he's talked a lot about, and that's never changed. And one of Doug's superpowers is his ability to communicate, articulate, and motivate, or at least it has been to this point. But now those words just come off as hollow, because he spoke very passionately after last night's game about defense, said a lot of things that we love to hear, including like, it's one thing to talk about it, you got to be about it, and very openly, not calling anybody out on his roster, but challenging his roster. Like, you guys are talented enough to at least play hard for each other on the defensive side of the ball. He's not asking and telling them, hey, be a top 10 defense in the league. He knows that's impossible. He's not a miracle worker, but he's challenging this team to play hard on that end of the floor, which should be a reasonable ask. But again, those words come off as hollow when the players who, all the respect they've earned, their years in the league and all the accolades that you listed off, great, but they're not doing what the quote unquote standard is. But he's never going to pull them off the floor. So there's no repercussion for doing it at this point. So I wonder if Doug's just doing himself a disservice by speaking so openly about this rather than coming out with, the only logical explanation that makes sense to me, Jeremiah, which is this group has barely played together. We've been banged up. We still haven't had Keegan Murray. Domas has missed 3 games. Zach LaVine's missed a game. I'm throwing them out there and I'm letting them figure it out trial by fire. And we're just going to see what we have and evaluate for a couple weeks. I would respect that and understand that more than, oh no, we're about defense and this is the standard and blah, blah, blah. But Dennis Schroeder plays 28 minutes, doesn't play a lick of defense. And DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are out there not playing a lick of defense, but Keon Ellis is sitting on the bench. It doesn't make sense. One does not equal the other.
Yeah. And I mean, to answer your question, yeah, I think he's definitely doing himself a disservice. I mean, I think Doug, and rightfully so, has built a level of trust within the organization, whether that be the top, the bottom, fan base, everything. He, from his time as a player to working around the team as a broadcaster to as a coach to now as the head coach, he has earned the right to be trusted around this organization, similar to a Vlade. The problem is, and you hit the nail right on the head, he's eroding that trust when he's coming out and he's saying these things publicly that everyone can see with their own 2 eyes is just not the case. And yeah, like you said, I mean, he says he legitimately said on Sunday, like, I love Keon Ellis. I'm a big fan of Keon Ellis. He does the things Doug wants him to do, but then I'm not going to play him. So it's like, okay, well then the other thing, so it's not a Keon problem. That means Doug has some other, he's got a gun to his head basically. And he isn't allowed to play the rotations that he really wants to play. And I understand that. I mean, I think to an extent, Mike Brown was in that similar scenario for a while. And I mean, you said that Doug's words seem to be kind of echoing hollow. I mean, it rings true of the exact same thing with Mike Brown. I mean, Mike Brown had basically the same group with, albeit a couple of little tweaks, but largely the same thing. I mean, Mike Brown was very public about constantly harping on the defensive end, and eventually it cost him his job, right? And it cost the Kings their franchise player in De'Aaron Fox. So yeah, I mean, the words don't mean anything. And I don't necessarily think that that's Doug's fault. He's just the spokesperson for all of this. But at some point, this organization really has to take some accountability. And that's something that Scott Perry has really, preached coming into this organization. It's also what Mike Brown preached coming into the organization. But at the end of the day, ownership, the front office, they're gonna need to take a little bit of accountability for this situation. And you can't just pin it all on Doug because it's making Doug look really bad. And I don't think it's fair, but at the same time, it's what he gets because he's in that seat.
Is Doug forced to make this veteran-laden roster work, and it has to be them that makes it work? And the reason why I asked that question is it became public knowledge less than a month ago when Sam Amick released an article in The Athletic about Doug Christie's contract situation. He's on a prove-it contract. The first 2 years are like $2 million a year each year. That's probably, I don't know this for sure, but it's got to be close to, if not the lowest paid coach in the league.
Yeah.
The third year is significantly higher salary, but it's a team option. Over the next 2 years, the Kings are financially committed to at least 2 contracts in Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Now, both of them might not make it to the end of their contracts here, but as of right now, like, those 2 contracts are here for the next 2 years, and Doug's timeline syncs up directly with them. I've always looked at that and alarm bells have gone off in my head, because what that suggests to me is if over these 2 years, Doug can't figure out a way to make this roster work, whatever that means, whether it's making the playoffs, winning in the play, I have no idea what making it work means for this organization at this point. Does that mean that Doug is going to go and fall off the books, as those 2 are going to fall off the books? So Doug is aware of this. Doug is coaching for his job. So to some extent, he has it, unlike when he was the interim head coach last year, but he has it with the caveat of, I got to make this group work for the next 2 years, even though everything tells me it's probably not going to work. So is Doug, like, does he have to do this?
Yeah, I mean, he does. At the end of the day, like, at the end, as much as anyone in any job, right, has like the ability to kind of move freely and do their tasks the way that they want to do them, and put forth their deliverables in their own style. At the end of the day, we all answer to our bosses in some extent, right? And Doug Christie's no different. So Doug has his entire attributes of his career that he's built his career off of. That is how he wants to coach. But at the end of the day, he has to play guys who are making 90 or $100 million over the next 2 years. And if ownership wants to sell tickets and they want him playing, he's going to play. And I don't think Doug really has any control over that. And I'm not saying you bench, a guy like Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine's a very good basketball player, but the identity doesn't fit the makeup of the roster. And this is something that's been evident for years, since Beam Team 1. And Beam Team 1 didn't hang their hat on the defensive end, and that's the most success this team has had in 20 years. So I said it on my podcast right when the season started. If the Kings are going to be successful this year, they're going to have to find an identity, and I don't think that's going to be rooted in defense. And so far, that's kind of proven to be true. And we'll see if they can, I hate to put it like this, but kind of just block out all of the nonsense and just be real with themselves and the fan base that, we don't have the guys to be this defensive juggernaut that we want to be. We need to lean into what we can build on the offensive side. And the offensive side hasn't even been pretty. So the offense is bad. The defense has been bad. You got to figure out which one of those is most easily repairable. And I don't think that's the defensive side. So you got to be good at one of them.
To some extent, Zach said that very thing last night, answering my question. He's like, it is personnel based. The example he uses, he goes, we just played Rudy Gobert. You're not going to expect Rudy Gobert to go out there and score 30 points. He's a defensive player.
Correct.
So what Zach is essentially saying is, look at this roster. This roster is loaded with incredibly talented offensive players. And I hear him. At the same time, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan combined for 48 points last night. And it was the most irrelevant 48 points because the Kings still lost by almost 30. Because if you can't stop anybody, if you're going to give up 144 points, it doesn't matter how many great scorers you have on your roster. So there's truth and there's excuse to everything that's being said. Watching that game, Jeremiah, I couldn't help but keep my eye on center court. And there in center court on Kings Road is front and center, as always, is Vivek Ranadive. And to his left is Scott Perry. To his right is Alvin Gentry. Not the kingpin. Well, Perry is the kingpin in the front office. Gentry kind of more of an advisor role, but still two prominent figures in the front office are sitting next to him. All three of them just scowling, arms crossed, very unhappy. For the first time, maybe ever, Vivek got up in the middle of the game and left and did not come back.
Yeah.
That was at the end of the third quarter. And I don't want to take this down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and is Doug Christie really in charge? But this is kind of the seed that this ownership group has planted that will be consistently in the minds of people who watch this team and organization closely, because there's a track record. There's a trail of breadcrumbs of ownership getting overly involved, imposing what they want on organizational decisions as early as the Zach LaVine trade for De'Aaron Fox. Zach LaVine's been a guy that Vivek Ranadive has loved forever. And again, I don't want this to be true, especially for Scott Perry, who just got here, but I don't even want to imagine the potential scenario where Doug's like, I want to play Keon, but my bosses are telling me not to. And that's one of the few logical explanations for this so far, and will become the only logical explanation should it continue for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, neither of us think that Keon Ellis fixes the Kings. I've seen him some comments recently, everyone's too in love with, Keon Ellis. He does not. We totally understand that. It's not that Keon Ellis is going to make the Kings a 500 team. It's that you say a thing and then you don't back it up with your actions. True. You say, I want to be a defensive-minded team. I want guys to sit down on the defensive end with their arms out, and I expect that on every play. Keon Ellis, for the most part, will do that for you. And not to mention he's just an incredibly gifted defender. So he does the intangibles. He's your best team. He's your best defender. Keegan Murray's probably your best team defender, but Keon Ellis is probably your best individual defender. So it's inexplicable that he can't find any minutes in this so-called logjam other than what you're saying. So, I mean, I don't think it's conspiratorial. I mean, obviously we'll never get any of this confirmed, but and so I wouldn't mark my life on it, but I mean, yeah, the proof is in the pudding, and reality is the Kings have made inexplicable moves over the last calendar year, trading De'Aaron Fox for basically Zach LaVine and a couple of picks. And now you're stuck with this roster that doesn't fit together, and you have a defensive minded coach playing non-defensive minded players. And it's not like it's working, right? It's not like, oh, you're playing these guys that aren't defensive minded or gifted on the defensive end, but it's working. You're holding guys, to 110 points or, 120 points here and there. No, you're giving up 3 40-point quarters in the last 2 games. So it's like, it's not working. And, I think it's just going to get ugly. And that's, you hate to see it with a guy like Doug Christie, who's such a gem of this organization prior to becoming the Kings head coach. But this is what happens when you get put into the frying pan. The fire's hot, and Mike Brown felt it. Doug Christie's going to feel it, is feeling it. And I don't know, but I have a feeling some shoes are going to drop this season. I just don't know what that is, whether that's I think it's going to come in the fashion of trades where then you can play your young guys. And you got to imagine when Scott Perry came in, he had this plan in this window that he and Vivek were on the same page with of, hey, I'm going to come in. The first 2 years are going to be ugly. We're going to do this. We're going to hire Doug. We can see where Doug is at as a head coach in 2 years once we kind of get some of this old roster situation dealt with and move on. And you hate to think that that's Doug's situation, but it kind of seems like it's Doug's situation. I mean, if it's true that he's on a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year team option, yeah, he's this middleman, and it's not fair to him. But at the same time, there's not a lot of these jobs around, and so of course you're going to take it if you were offered it.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets, now, it can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is get in the building and cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I love that what you see is what you pay on Game Time. When you click on the seats that you want and it shows the price point, that is the price point. They're not going to add a bunch of hidden fees on you at the end and spook you into either not buying tickets or paying more than you wanted to. Plus, you can see exactly what your view looks like from your seats, so you have absolutely no confusion of where you're going to be sitting and what it's going to look like, regardless of the size of the venue. And their zone deals are game-changing. You can pick a section, Game Time picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find NBA tickets for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. And of course, Locked On Kings is brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, then beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood Strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, so expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Let's just assume for the short term that the explanation is simply right now he's throwing his main guys out there, trial by fire. That's the only saving grace explanation that I can give him. He's throwing them out there. He wants them to learn together, try and figure it out as much as possible, and use time in the early parts of the season to figure it out. Let's just assume that is the explanation. Through 10 games, the Kings are 3-7. The next 8 games are Denver, Atlanta, Minnesota again, San Antonio, Oklahoma City for the third time, Memphis, Denver for the third time, Minnesota for the third time. Those are their next 8 games. Realistically, like, if they don't get that Atlanta game, they're maybe winning 1 of those games. They'd be lucky to win 3. Yeah. So I hope I get the opportunity to ask Doug this in the future, but we can only talk about it amongst ourselves right now. How long do you let that experiment go? How long do you let it go to let these guys figure it out? If your goal is to lose games and secure a high draft pick, well, then let them go. Then you're doing great. But if your goal is, like you say, to win basketball games, and I think Doug needs to win basketball games in order to try and keep as much job security as he can, by the time you get through those first 18 games, and maybe that's enough of a sample size, or maybe Keegan Murray comes back and now you get an even better look at your real, true starting 5, you could be in such a deep hole in the Western Conference where if you figure it out, it doesn't matter, because that's a hole you can't climb out of, a la the month of May that the Athletics had. 1 month killed the Athletics season. They turned it around the complete second half of the season, played really good baseball down the stretch. It didn't matter because 1 bad month buried them. And we're staring at November going, this is a very easy bad month for this team while they figure out what they have.
Yeah, and I mean, the Kings figuring out what they have, I mean, the Kings know what they have. Like, we don't need to, I mean, we have how much film on DeMar DeRozan is there, right? And Domantas Sabonis at this point, and Zach LaVine. I mean, this is, Zach and DeMar played already together, and you saw what that looked like. Like, I can't help but think that this is, you can't even really call it like a soft tank, but it's like this team has no direction. So, and that's just a byproduct of the pieces that they have. And again, I want to stress, like, this, it sounds really bad for the individual players, but I'm not putting this on DeMar. I'm not putting this on Zach.
They are who they've always been.
Yeah, exactly. This is basketball, and Doug said this yesterday. Basketball is not golf. Like, this is a team sport. Like, you have role players, you have stars, these players play positions and have strengths in their game that if you're gonna be good, you have to play to those strengths. Like, the Warriors didn't build their dynasty off Draymond Green, like, being a perimeter 3-point shooter. Like, that would be absurd. And so, asking DeMar DeRozan to be this, like, defensive juggernaut of a player at this point in his career when he's arguably the best mid-range shooter of all time, it's absurd. And so I don't really put any of this on the players. It comes down to roster construction. And this team is just bad. They're not put together well. It's not even Scott Perry's fault. It's the prior front office that put together most of this. I mean, he's going to have to answer for this Dennis Schroeder deal, because this is, I mean, if you can get Russell Westbrook's production for $3 million a year, and you go sign Dennis Schroeder for 45 for 3, like, that's looking pretty bad at this point. But for the most part, it's a roster issue, has nothing to do with any individual player. Zach talked about this answering your question the other day. I also asked him in preseason, like, I asked him, what do you think your strengths are? Because he said we have to play to our strengths. And I'm like, well, what are those strengths? And he listed off a number of things that he's correct about, but none of them have anything to do with defense. And he went up and down the roster. And so it's just, it's almost like a form of gaslighting, in my opinion, for everyone in this organization to be like, we're going to be, we're going to win the fight, and we're going to be a tough defensive team. We're going to pick up 94 feet. And you have this roster of guys that it just doesn't even make any bit of sense at all. It's like, at least be honest with your fans. At least be honest with the people that watch you and pay good money to go to your games. Like, it's just the messaging's off. The roster is not constructed to be good. And this is what you get. And I mean, I feel bad personally for Kings fans. I mean, Kings fans got a taste of, playoff basketball and a taste of relevance for a little bit there with, as De'Aaron Fox and Domas led them to their playoff berth and taking the Warriors to 7. but it's been nothing but bad since. And there's really no light at the end of this tunnel. It's not like you have this star young player that you're looking to build on around. I mean, you got, pieces you think that can be good in the future, but you're not playing them. So it's like, who knows like how this team moves forward, but there's no direction. It's a rudderless ship. And I don't know how you solve it.
Well, gut feeling, Jeremiah, we'll wrap up with this. Tomorrow night, is it another ugly game against Denver at home, or was hopefully giving up 58 points in the last 2 home games combined a little bit of a wake-up call for this group to where they at least fight a little bit harder and make it more of a game?
Yeah, I think they'll make this a game. I mean, there's just no way they don't. I mean, and historically over the last couple of years, the Kings have played Denver well. I mean, Denver's such a good team, but the Kings do play Denver well. I mean, there's been some classics in Denver the last couple of years.
Right.
Good games in Sacramento against the Nuggets. So I think the Kings play it well. I mean, I would go out on a limb and say, there's maybe a chance that they sneak this one out. I mean, after those 2 performances, I mean, you got to think that they come out with some sort of fight. I mean, if they don't, it's just like
they're cooked already.
Just stick a fork in them. They're cooked. It's there's no life left. So I think they're going to play them well, and we'll see what that turns into. But I think they got a shot against the Nuggets.
Well, Jeremiah, bring your pajamas to the Golden One Center tomorrow because the game starts at 8 p.m. So we'll have a slumber party after the game is over. Appreciate you taking the time here on Locked On Kings, my man, and we'll talk again soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Matt.